Welcome to the International Institute of Facilitation's podcast, Spaghetti on the Wall. I'm Eileen Dowse, Chair Emeritus and Director of Certification for INIFAC, the International Institute for Facilitation. And today I'm joined by a dear friend, Deadra Welcome. She is an instructional designer, a facilitator, a coach, and a learning strategist. Her company is Concerning Learning. And today we're going to talk about being a learning facilitator. We're going to we're going to untangle this topic and serve it up with some fun and humor. And if you've ever hung out with Deadra and I, you know that will happen. So, hi, Deadra.
Hello, Eileen.
I love the topic about learning facilitator because if my kids were listening, they'd go, oh, yeah, that's my mom. Anytime anything happened when they were children, I would always begin with, what did you learn? So when you think about being a learning facilitator, what comes to mind for you?
Well, first, let me just say that our houses were doing the same thing because in my house, I would always ask, and I still do, even with them not being in my house, what did you learn?
Mm-hmm.
I think that being a learning facilitator is really just creating space for people to experiment, to make mistakes, to learn from each other in a way that doesn't feel like, you're being judged or you're being
Yeah.
retaliated against for having a difference of opinion. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's really making sure that everybody can show up and do their best, learn what they need to, and then find ways to apply it when they leave.
Yeah. Do you know what? I'm going to add to that thinking. Not only apply it when you leave, and I think what a learning facilitator does is they create that environment. I always call it like a learning lab, a safe learning lab where you can stumble and make mistakes. It's almost like a dance class, right? Where you can step on toes and make mistakes in this safe environment to learn.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I tell them this is the place where if you had that question, like, do I ask that question or is it safe to ask that question?
Yeah,
That is the place where you ask those questions.
right.
And so there's no such thing as a dumb question. There's
Uh-huh.
only questions that haven't been asked.
Yeah,
And I let them know that they're valued and their input is valued.
yeah. And for me, I think that is a challenge by being, instead of just being a true trainer. We all know there are some educators. I teach both in the university, government corporations all over the place. You can have that true trainer that says, here's the information, let me jam it down your throat. Just sit back, listen, and learn. And then the learning facilitator, I think, is that little bit of, has that difference because it incorporates adult learning.
Absolutely. Absolutely. There's definitely, I stopped using trainer a while ago because I am a learning facilitator.
There you
I
go.
help people find whatever they need, discover their learning nuggets, and then pack them in their toolkit and go off and do great things with it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's not about presenting. I say if you're doing training, it needs to be presentation, application, and feedback. That means I'm not the only one talking. They need to be a part of the
Yeah.
learning experience and not have it be done to them.
Yeah. And I always think, you know what, we train dogs, so why are we training people? And I know we've got training and development departments, but I always think education in my head. I'm hearing education as a,
And I I try not to say education. You know why?
yeah.
I think the educational system has gotten a bad rap.
Mm,
And by the time people get to being an adult, there's like this cringe about education because
yeah.
our education needs a refresh where
Yeah.
they are more facilitating.
Yeah.
And so getting away from, adult learning, we have andragogy, we have pedagogy, but I think all people learn by doing,
Yeah.
by being a part of it and not it being done to them.
For those,
So,
I'm
yeah,
going to interrupt you here because
okay.
for those listening, let's take a moment. you've hit a soft spot, not a soft spot. You've hit a trigger for me on this pedagogy, andragogy. Can can you define that in your words? Because I am hearing so much about we're doing pedagogy. No, you're not. So can you define it?
Well, I'm not sure if I'm going to give you the definition in
Go
the
for
dictionary, but for me, and I maybe I'm saying it andragogy, maybe it's goji. We can do
Maybe it's
both.
goji. Just go. Go with the
Just
goji or
go.
goji.
Andragogy is adult learning and how adults learn the principles of adult learning. It has to be relevant. It has to be needed. They have to know why they're learning it. And I don't see a difference. Pedagogy is the way that children learn.
Yep.
And I think that they need to know why. They may not have all the context because of they don't have as much lived experience, but they still need to know why it's important that they're learning this and how it can help them.
Yeah.
So I've kind of looked at it the same way, and I think if our educational system all the way up through college would adopt some of these principles of adult learning, I think that we would see more interest and more engagement in our educational system.
Right on.
Now,
Right
that's
on.
just the Deidreism that I just shared.
I
My
love it. No,
personal
and I
opinion.
check, and I totally agree. And as we're talking about this, how about we do a plug for INIFAC? Because INIFAC, and you and I are both certified master learning facilitators, which is a credential that INIFAC offers based on a list of competencies. And there are 6 competencies. I'm going to read them out, and then I'm going to ask you the question on those. What do you think is the most difficult for those using the learning facilitator technique? Okay, so we have program design, delivery methods, so how you deliver the content, communication, program evaluation methods, how do you know the learners learned what they were supposed to learn? One of my favorites, professional standards and ethics, and then engagement. How do you keep people engaged? Of that list, which do you think is the most difficult or maybe even frustrating for people?
I it is hard to say the one that's the most difficult. I think the one that is overlooked the most is the design. And it might just be my own bias, because I am an instructional designer, but I also think that it has the most impact because it ties together your evaluation. Like your design, how do you measure if it was effective unless you've designed well-written learning objectives and what they were supposed to learn in the session? Or how do you ensure that you have built in ways to address the standards? I think that people, learning facilitators focus a lot on what happens in the virtual or in the in-person classroom.
Right.
Well, the real engagement starts with your design. And if you have designed it to be engaging, then that's half the battle. Yeah, you make adjustments, and you should, as a learning facilitator, you should make adjustments because you never know what you're going to encounter while you're facilitating. So you need to be prepared, you need to be able to pivot, but the design will guide you in what direction to pivot in and what direction that you need to focus on this area more than others.
Yeah. Let me tell you one of the things I like about you is that you and I think differently. Because I think I would answer the question differently, although you may have just swayed me on the design part. For me, I would say it's engagement, and I completely hear you about you got to have your map, and then you can go in different directions. I want to take engagement in a different level because for me, I find with learning facilitators, what often is the hardest for them is to park that ego and say, these people don't have to learn the way I want them to learn. So they got the map and they say, all right, this is what we're going to do. And even if the people know all this content, you mentioned the word pivot, right on. It's like, all right, I don't have to spend 30 minutes. They've already got it. They already understand. Have that flexibility to serve the group. So maybe what I'm realizing is all of those competencies are difficult and important, and you got to have them all.
Absolutely. I was going to say, I don't see a difference in how we are addressing it. I
Yeah.
see that they're very similar and complementary
Yeah.
because you're right. That's why we have the competency model that we have is because they are all equally important.
Yeah.
And if you don't have all of them in some level of proficiency,
Yeah.
you're not going to be serving the profession well. You're not going to show up as the learning facilitator that is effective.
Yeah. When you facilitate, what do you find people say um, about you and your approach, which is more as a learning facilitator? And let me give you an example of what I'm talking about. So I teach a class in the university, and the students will often say, "You're not like other professors," because I mean, we have agendas, we have ground rules, we're like crazy engaging, and I'm like, argue with me, happy about that. What kind of feedback are you getting because you're a learning facilitator?
The same types of comments you get that you're not like others. This is the best experience I've had. And not to pat myself on the back, but I pride myself in meeting the learners where they are.
Yeah.
And yeah, I come with a designed program, a very well designed program, might I add. However, there are times when I go completely off script because the learners have taken me there, and it's something that they need that is not necessarily in my design, but it is something that they need, and I can give it to them and still get back on track.
I think that's the key, right? So it's 2 points that I'm hearing you made. One is learning facilitator is not just facilitating all what they know. The learning facilitator has to know their stuff. You have to have an enormous toolbox of both content and tools, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I think that's really important. And then I mean, how appropriate for a podcast called Spaghetti on the Wall. We've got throw it over here, yet the facilitator can bring it back to say, all right, now we're going to add on.
Yep. Yep. Which is why we set up our workshops and our training for, okay, let me know why you came here. What do you need to walk away with?
Yeah.
And then I manage their expectations because if it's not necessarily related to the content, I need to let them know this is not a part of this program, but I will do my best to weave it in
Yeah.
where it's appropriate. And you have a responsibility to let me know this is what I need at this moment. And because I am working on content, however, I may forget that there's that one little thing you need, and you need to remind me. You need to remind me. So there's a mutual accountability and responsibility
Yeah.
for the learning because I am not responsible for your learning.
Yeah.
I'm responsible for creating the environment and the tools and the resources for you to get what you need.
Yeah.
You are responsible for getting what you need and letting me know if I have not met the mark.
And I think you just nailed another interesting point in that it's the relationship that you have with the people in the room. It's not me all knowing dumping content on you.
Yes. Nobody needs content dumped on them. We've all experienced it and how much learning really took place. I'm just waiting for you to stop talking.
Me? Now? Wait, what?
No, not you. The person who is dumping. Like,
Yeah.
please do not empty your trash in my trash can. I don't like that. When people, it's not about you as the facilitator. It's all about them.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just here to guide you.
Mm-hmm. I find that when I am I, educating, I can't use that word anymore now, helping others learn, and
You can say educated.
if they're engineers or physicians or a younger population, what I find happening is I will give content, I will give the source because that's that professional standards and ethics. But people are getting on their phones double checking. So content is easy. Anybody can get content. It is
Absolutely.
that internalizing piece that's the secret sauce.
Yep. And we add that. So that's why I use that recipe for increasing learner engagement.
Yeah.
It is the four main ingredients, and then there's five flavor enhancements because it's the sauce.
Oh.
You're making the connection. Learning needs to be fun. It
Mm-hmm.
needs to be partially informal. There, you
Mm-hmm.
need to build relationships. So one of the reasons why I went through a coaching certification program was
Mm-hmm.
to utilize my coaching principles in my training. I'm asking powerful
Beautiful.
questions.
Beautiful.
I'm asking because I want to engage them. I'm going
Mm-hmm.
to use an open-ended question so that we can get the conversation going. And then I can learn more about what they need and make sure that I can make those connections.
Yeah. Yeah, totally, totally agree. It's that psychological safety. It's being there with them. It's understanding where they're at, and being really respectful. That understanding you may not know it all. So I always like that term, very common facilitative term, using the wisdom in the group.
Oh yeah. Oh, they don't even realize that I am using them and I'm learning from them in the session. So I want to know, what is your experience level? I love classes or workshops where there's varying degrees of experience because you
Mm-hmm.
can tap into and engage those people with a lot of wisdom and a lot of experience and get them to help teach the class for you
Mm-hmm.
because that makes them feel valued. And then you're not talking at them. And then the novices, I want them to feel comfortable with saying, I don't know. So I
Yes.
might model that for them. If I don't know it, I'm going to say, I don't know. I haven't thought about it that way.
Yeah.
Wow. Let me process that for a second
Yeah.
because
And
I want them to know it's okay for them to do the same thing.
absolutely. I will also add to that and say, hey, here's the scoop. I don't know everything, and I've got some really great sources. So let's have the conversation. And if I don't know, I am going to bust my tail to find
Yes.
out for you. And it may not be today. Whether you like it or not, I will be sending you information maybe at a later date.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And going back to I know the ethics and the standards are super, that is your thing. Making sure you have permission to collect their data, their
Mm-hmm.
email address, so that
Mm-hmm.
you can send it to them after. Because sometimes, people, I just need to know if it's
Mm-hmm.
okay if I contact you, or here's my information. Contact me if you need additional resources.
Yeah. If we could just add, and don't post all the flip charts from your session on social media. Yeah, I've seen that too. So that's a whole, okay, we'll do another
Yeah, we're
podcast
gonna
on
do a whole
ethics.
podcast on that. We will. We
Hey,
will.
we need to wrap this up, and I do want to ask you. So, what suggestions do you have for anyone wanting to begin using these competencies? Then, sure, the easy answer is, hey, go to InEffect, find a mentor, do that. And let's say they're not interested. Please be interested. But let's say they're not interested. Uh, What do you think? What suggestions do you have for anyone who has heard this and went, learning facilitator, didn't think about that? Give us the first step.
I think the first step is to look at the competencies.
Mm,
I think you need to get familiar with them and know your strengths and your areas for improvement.
yeah.
Because even us seasoned facilitators are constantly learning, constantly adding, connecting with others. How do you do this? You and I share all the time, like different activities and icebreakers. And how do you do this? I'm having this challenge. Have you experienced that? That is something where you have to have that growth mindset in
Mm,
order to really be a great facilitator, a learning facilitator, because you're always practicing and you're always getting better.
is it too cute for me to say, ask yourself, what did you learn?
I love it
What did you learn? And
because you
get
and
with a
I do it
group.
all the time.
Exactly. Get with a group to say, hey, what did you learn? And yes.
And what do you still need to learn?
Ooh, yes. Ooh, I like that. I like that a
Yep.
lot.
Look at us.
Look at us always learning. Hey, Deidre, this has been a delight, and I hope those who are watching gained some nuggets or was able to pull some spaghetti off the wall of our topics and use them to your benefit. Deidre, I can't thank you enough. Always a delight to hang out with you, and I
Likewise.
look forward to doing another one of these on perhaps a different topic.
Let's do it.
All right. Thanks,
All
Deidre.
right.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.